that your friends and neighbors, maybe that's not a bad thing, but your friends and neighbors were going to be blown away. But we survived.
Hallelujah.
And it wasn't anything we did. I mean, you might have put plywood boards up on your windows, and you might have unplugged a few things, but that's small potatoes. God steered the storm away from us. And I know that the West Coast took a little tougher beating, but let me tell you what, I was there, and it wasn't as bad as it could have been. So why does God even send things like that our way, right? He could have just calmed the storm, because he did it in the Bible. He can do it today.
Amen.
I have to admit, I ran away. I've always stayed for hurricanes. I've hunkered down, and I have weathered the storm, but I got all kinds of reasons that I can justify what I did, but I ran away to Alabama. So you guys are here, so you must not have decided that this God thing is not worth it. You must have decided that you had faith in God the Father, that you were still going to have Jesus Christ as Lord of your life, because you're here. Some of you don't have electric, and we didn't have any electric until yesterday afternoon. That's tough going in a house that was built to run on electric. We had to redo the sound system because it runs on Wi-Fi, and we still don't have any Wi-Fi here. Little conveniences. Not a big deal, is it? We're alive. So give yourself a hand now. Come on. Let's clap, because you're alive, and you're here. You went through the storm, and you're on the other side. So the question is, how much faith in God do you have? At the point of impact, we hope it's enough, right? We hope we have as much faith as we think we have. We can stand down in fellowship and tell people how much faith we have. We are faithful followers of Jesus Christ. But when you're faced with 150-mile-an-hour winds, do you have the faith that you need? Go down.
We were in the eye. It rained.
I can stand up here and justify that. Yeah, until we're tested, we don't really know how much faith we have. You know, there's stories like that in the Bible where, like, for instance, Peter, he said, I will defend you until the very end. And when the men came to arrest Jesus at the Garden of Gethsemane, he cut off a servant's ear. Now, he didn't cut off a military guy's ear. He cut off the servant's ear. Jesus replaced the ear and said, hey, that's not the way we're going to fight this battle. But when the chips were down, when they led Jesus away, when he was tried in the middle of the night by a false court, by paid witnesses who witnessed against him. When everything was looking bleak, when the storm was at hand, Peter failed. Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times. Now, I know in his wildest dreams, he didn't think that was possible. In his wildest dreams, he imagined himself defending Christ to the very end. But, like me, he ran away. But it was the storm that was going to change Peter's life. It was a storm that was going to take something that he did that shamed him and turn him into a powerful apostle. It was the storm that let him know that his words weren't his faith. And he changed. He changed and became a powerful apostle. He became a person who defended Jesus to the end. When it mattered most. When it was the difference between this church being spread throughout the world, Peter hung in there. In Matthew 8:23, says, then he got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. What's wrong with that picture? These guys are boaters. That's their livelihood. They were fishermen. They spent their days in boats. They'd seen a few storms. Jesus was a carpenter. Maybe he spent a few days fishing in a boat, but not a whole lot. And it certainly wasn't his regular everyday thing. So what are these fishermen going to Jesus for when there's a storm? Shouldn't they be battening down the sails and preparing for heavy weather and taking care of this? Jesus has said, hey, get in the boat, we're going to go to the other side, right? And they were halfway there. They were halfway there, they're riding with Jesus, everything's great, and a storm comes up. They went to the right place, they went to Jesus. They said, help us. Help us fishermen with our boating problems. The disciples went and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we are going to drown. He replied, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. So what kind of man was Jesus? Is he a special guy? Jesus gave up his godhood to be on this earth. He was a guy just like Bill here, a girl just like Bobby, Joe, Lisa. There wasn't anything different physically about him. He was Jesus of Nazareth, son of a carpenter, as far as everybody knew. But he had one thing that made him different. Because his faith was perfect. He had complete trust in his heavenly Father. Because his faith was so strong, he appeared to be more than a man. He appeared godly in his humanity. Look, God didn't have to provide those storms. Jesus could have calmed the waves and the wind before anything happened. He wasn't worried. He knew that his Father was going to take care of him. So he was asleep in the boat. No problems. Everything was taken care of. He was all prayed up. And his apostles, they were worried. They were seamen. But they went to the right place. They went to Jesus. Probably before they did a lot of things that they could have done as experienced boatsmen, securing sails and taking care of things, they went to Jesus first. And Jesus said, hey, I told you we were going to the other side. It's not going to be a problem. I told you we're going to the other side. We're only halfway there. So there's a storm. So what? You need to have faith that your God is going to see you through that storm. He's not going to protect you and make you free of storms in your life. Sure, we had a hurricane, but there's a lot of other different storms that are going on in people's lives today. We got medical problems, financial problems, we got mental problems, we've got family difficulties, we've got all that stuff. Those are all storms. And if you think that God's not with you because that storm happens, that's not right. Amen. We can become strong, and we can know that we're strong because we went through the storm. We went through the difficulties in our life. So Jesus' faith in the Father was complete, without blemish. So he appeared godly in his humanity. Not because he had special powers as he walked amongst us, but because Jesus had perfected his faith, a thing he demonstrated so that we can endeavor to achieve that perfect faith. You can be the same way. There's nothing keeping you from that perfect faith. And in this storm that we just went through, we get an insight into our faith, into our walk with Christ, taking us closer, step by step, to that perfect faith. Sure, Hurricane Irma is past, but there's other hurricanes out there in the Atlantic, and there's other hurricanes in your life. Maybe they're happening in the midst of what you've got going right now, and maybe they're brewing out there. They're just waiting to hit. But you can withstand those hurricanes because you have faith in God the Father. James chapter 1 verse 2 says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials." we discussed it in Sunday school. That doesn't mean you're happy, okay? Count it all joy that you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. And let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfected and completed, lacking nothing. Spiritually whole, mature, lacking nothing. Jesus' faith, the faith that he demonstrated to us, lacked nothing.
Amen.
It was whole and spiritually mature. Learn to expect, as you follow Jesus, that storms will come. They come for a very good purpose, so that you will learn something new about yourself and our great Savior's love toward us. And it's an opportunity for us to show Christ's love to others. Maybe it's that neighbor you never introduced yourself to. Been living next door to you, you have no idea what his name is. Maybe it's people that you come in contact with that need something. Can you provide it? In a storm like this, we need to provide for those around us. We need to show God's love. In Luke chapter 12, verse 22, it says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothes." Power came on yesterday afternoon at our house, and Bobby sprinted to the laundry. She started washing things immediately because we were about out of clothes and stuff. It had been 2 weeks since we washed anything. Guys don't have to worry as much. It was a good shirt yesterday. It's still a good shirt today. Hey. So when you go through a storm, it may seem as if the Lord doesn't understand what's going on, that he's not aware of your circumstances. Maybe he's asleep, not paying attention to you. But we can be sure that God is never asleep.
Amen.
He's allowing things to happen to test our faith so that we know where we're at. We know what we've got and what we don't have yet. We are being tested like Peter was tested. You know, Peter denied Christ 3 times, but Jesus never denied Peter. He even went out looking for him when he was resurrected. Peter went fishing. Probably not a happy fishing day, probably kind of a sad fishing day, because he lost his faith. That's a terrible thing to lose. Psalms 121, verse 3 and 4 says, "He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep." God's got a goal in mind. He's got a purpose for your life. He's got an end game. And look, I'm not the best student. Sometimes God trying to teach me a lesson and it takes 3 or 4 times, maybe more. But he's true to his purpose, and he's going to keep teaching me a lesson until I get it. Okay, until I finally say, okay, Lord, I finally understand. I get it. I promise I won't forget for at least a couple days. And when I do forget, God's going to teach me that lesson again, and it's going to be a tougher lesson and tougher each time. This is like Moses. He went up on the mountain, and God gave him 2 tablets with the laws that he wanted the Israelites to live by. And Moses came down and he got angry. And he threw the tablets down because the people weren't just waiting for him to get back. They were kind of having a party and going their own way. So God had Moses come back up the mountain to get new tablets. But God didn't make new tablets for Moses. He made Moses make his own tablets. So he would value them. That's what he's going to do in your life. Learn lessons quickly. It's a lot easier.
Yes.
I was looking for an illustration about God's perspective. You know, if you think about it, God's up there, he's over there, he's in there, he's back there. I mean, when he sees what you're going through, it's a whole different realm of vision, right? He can see a few days from now, he can see where you've been, he can see your position from above and the sides and below. God's able to see exactly what your situation is. So here's an illustration I found. It says, a battleship assigned to a training squadron had been at sea on maneuvers in heavy weather for several days. It was serving on the battleship. I was serving on the battleship and was on watch on the bridge as night fell. The visibility was poor and patchy fog. So the captain remained on the bridge, keeping an eye on all activities. Shortly after dark, the lookout on the wing reported, light bearing on the starboard bow. Is it steady or moving? The captain called out. The lookout replied, steady, Captain, which meant we were on a dangerous collision course with that ship. The captain then called to the signalman, signal that ship. We are on a collision course. Advise you change course 20 degrees to port. Back came the signal. Advise for you to change course 20 degrees to starboard. The captain said, send, I'm the captain. Change course 20 degrees. Back came, I'm a seaman second class, came the reply, you had better change course 20 degrees to starboard. By that time, the captain was furious. He spat out, send, I'm a battleship, change course 20 degrees. Back came a flashing light, I'm a lighthouse. So we changed course. We can only see one perspective. And according to the Bible, we see that dimly. But God sees the whole thing. He knew that that was a lighthouse. Sometimes it's hard to remember that God has a better vantage point and that He knows the future.
Amen.
In fact, did you know that He offers us His own peace in the midst of the storms in life? No guarantees that you're not going to have storms, but he offers you peace in the midst of the storm. In John chapter 14, verse 27 says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you, not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let you be afraid." He says, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I am overcome the world." God is in control, and he's won the battles that you're about to face or that you've just faced. Has Jesus ever failed you? The problem in the midst of the storm is usually us, not Christ, not our Heavenly Father. We fail us.
Yep.
Often imagine what it must have been like in that little boat after the great calm fell upon the sea. You know, I picture Jesus standing on one side of the boat and the apostles on the other, kind of making the boat list a little bit. And they're going, "Who can this be?" they ask, "that even the winds and the sea obey him." But we try and stylize who Jesus is in the Bible. These guys were living with him, okay? Maybe he snored a little bit, I don't know. But they slept along the side of the road. They slept at various people's houses. They gathered food when they could. Jesus had nothing. He wasn't some powerful God living amongst his people for a period of time, showing humility and blessing them. He was a guy walking down a dirt road, talking to people that didn't want to hear always what he had to say, knew that folks were out to kill him, and you know what? They succeeded in the end. They killed him. Didn't stop him. He knew that storm was coming his whole life. He knew that storm was on the way. He knew that he was going to go to the cross. He knew that he was going to die. But he also knew that he was coming back.
Hallelujah.
He had faith in all that. As a man, it was hard for him. He prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane that if there was any other way that God could accomplish what he needed to accomplish without him going to the cross, let's do that.
Yep.
But in the end, he said, "But your will, not my will, be done." So he went to that cross. He was innocent. He didn't commit a crime, but he was a pain in the butt for a lot of people in that day. You trusted Jesus in this storm. You trusted God would bring you through. You trusted Jesus Christ, sitting on the right hand of God right now, who was, as a man, just like you and me, able to calm the wind and the waves. I'm sure I could stand out there on the beach all day and nothing would happen. It's not that I don't have the ability. I don't have the faith. I ran away from the storm. I went to Estero to pick up my mother-in-law, who was living in a trailer. And we ran up the coast to Alabama. And it was a good thing we did that. Her town is pretty much a wreck. And in the midst of all that wreckage, there was one trailer unharmed. Skylar and I drove a second car because we wanted to keep our cars safe too. So we got there a little earlier and we called to them and said, well, your house is okay. You need to mow the grass and pick up some oranges. That was about it. It was amazing. I'm not trusting luck. I'm not trusting good fortune. I'm trusting God, that He did that. He didn't need to do that. There was nobody there. We were all gone. They did it anyway. I got back to my house. We lost a coconut palm. I don't know. Was there anything else? I don't think there was anything else. We cleaned. There was lots of leaves in the pool. But that was it. We didn't have any power. That was a pain. But for me, I left on a sunny day and came back, and it was a stinking hot, sunny day when I got back. We had the opportunity to go to a church service in Alabama. We didn't settle for second best. We could have. We went down Church Row in the town we were at, and we saw some different churches. And the first church we came to was First Baptist. Later on, there was a Second Baptist. But we went to First Baptist. And the pastor there was talking about the storm. For them, it was the storm that was about to come. It was the hurricane that was going to hit them. It was a mildly rainy day. No wind, nothing. But he had a very interesting way of ending his sermon. He said, your salvation, Father God ordained it. And Jesus Christ obtained it. And the Holy Spirit in you maintains it. So say that with me, will you? First of all, God ordained it.
God ordained it.
Jesus obtained it.
Jesus obtained it.
And the Holy Spirit maintains it.
And the Holy Spirit maintains it.
That's what's going on in your life. If you don't have that, if you haven't accepted Christ in your life, then come on down. If you got things that you need to pray about, that you want to talk to God, come on down. You come on up. Come on down and pray about them. We got deacons that'll come and pray with you. We'll share your difficulties. We'll share the things going on in your life. Maybe there's somebody in your family that needs prayer. Today is the day, and now is the time. So